I'm Hayden Padgett. I'm the chairman of the Young Republican National Federation. And I have the dubious job of being the timekeeper tonight. So as we adhere to the time limits on our discussion, you'll see me flash the yellow card, which shows 15 seconds, and then the pink/red card, which is stop talking, which I'm sure all of our candidates will adhere to the stop talking rule, but if they don't, I'll just wave it even more emphatically in their face. But without any further ado, let's get into some of the rules for tonight's debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question. If a candidate is negatively mentioned by name in the response of another candidate, they will then have 30 seconds to respond. Based on a blind draw before the debate, Mr. Reitz will give the first introductory remarks, followed by Senator Huffman, and then Senator Middleton. And with that, thank you for joining tonight, and I'll turn it back over to our moderator, Chris Klement.
And in the spirit of fiscal conservatism, the timekeeper and the moderator are sharing the microphone. So before we get started, I wanted to thank everybody for being here tonight. Obviously, the Texas Attorney General position is extremely important. It means a lot that we have so many of you here tonight trying to inform yourself to make good choices when you go to the polls for the March primary. We also want to thank our wonderful sponsors who made tonight happen. First, we want to thank the Collin County Young Republicans for hosting this event. Next, we would like to thank Michael Slaughter, candidate for Collin County Commissioner Precinct 2. Next, we would like to thank the law firm of Ringel and Brymer, PLLC. We'd like to thank Shrader Promotions LLC. And these are young Republican-owned businesses, by the way. We'd also like to thank our wonderful friends at the Plano Citizens Coalition. We'd also like to thank the Plano Republican women for their wonderful volunteers. And finally, the problem children in the house, we would like to think of Better Texas. Well, with that, we will begin the debate. Mr. Reitz, you have the opening introductory remarks.
All right, great. You know, these debates are supposed to help persuade voters to your side, but with what appears to be like a No Kings poster and like tall boys, this is non-alcoholic. Although it might not be. We'll see how the debate goes. Well, look, hey folks, my name's Aaron Reitz. I'm running for Attorney General because I believe that we are in a battle for the soul of our state and our nation. And I know from personal experience that the primary arena in which we are fighting the dark forces of the left is the justice system. This is something that President Trump understood, he ran on it, and he won on it. And as one of his very first orders of business was his bringing me to the senior ranks of the United States Department of Justice. And when he nominated me, he said, Aaron Reitz is a true MAGA attorney and a warrior for the Constitution. Now, on the one hand, that's a good description of what our next Attorney General ought to be. But more fundamentally, there is a reason why he said that about me. It's because he saw someone who has led legal troops into legal combat to deliver legal victories for our state, for our nation, for our Constitution, and our conservative Christian values. It's that record that makes me uniquely suited to serve as the next Chief Legal Officer of Texas. And as we flesh out the issues tonight, one of the things that you're going to hear is each of my opponents, even absentee Chip, we're all going to begin to start sounding the same. We have similar values. We have similar ideas, similar plans, similar priorities. What makes me different is I'm the only one who has actually done the work that you would expect out of an attorney general. I'm the only one who has sustained the battle scars, advancing our values in every corner of the justice system in state and federal courts. This is a critical reason why Attorney General Paxton endorsed me to succeed him. And when he endorsed me, he didn't mince words. He didn't say there's many nice people in the race. I've known them all for a while. But on balance, he's serviceable, and so I'm going with him. No, he said Aaron Reitz is the only qualified candidate in this race. He's the only one that I would trust to pass the baton down to. Why? It's because of my record, litigating, investigating, suing, defending, appealing, and winning in court on all of the issues that we're going to talk about tonight. Thank you for coming. My name's Aaron Reitz, and I hope to earn your support.
It's great to be here tonight in this great venue, and welcome all of you who took time out from your own lives to come and hear about us tonight. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself because I think it's important that you know about my unique qualifications to serve as your next Attorney General. I started my career back in 1981 as the Secretary at the District Attorney's Office in Houston, Texas, Harris County, worked my way through law school at night, and when I graduated, I became a prosecutor. I served as a prosecutor for 15 years in Harris County, tried over 100 jury trials, the most serious crimes all the way up to death penalty cases, had individuals executed since then. I worked as the chief legal counsel for the Organized Crime Narcotics Task Force, working with law enforcement officers closely, local, state, federal officers. Worked as a gang prosecutor for a while with the Harris County DA's office. Later, I ran for criminal district court judge, where I was elected twice. I presided over tens of thousands of the hardcore criminal cases, all felony cases. Again, looking at it from a different viewpoint, an objective viewpoint, but also always in the courtroom. In 2008, I won a special election when I ran for Senate District 17. I've been a state senator in the Senate now for 17 and a half years. During those years, I've served as chair of state affairs, where all the big state issues move through, all the big conservative issues. I've served as chair of jurisprudence, chair of redistricting, redrew all the maps, congressional, legislative, SBOE in 2021. And for the last two sessions, I've been the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. What does that mean? It means I write a $340 billion budget from scratch, where I go through all the state agencies. I know intimately all the state agencies, where the money is, what's happening. I am ready and willing to be your next Attorney General. As we move through the evening, I hope to tell you more about me. Thank you.
Howdy. This does look like a tall boy, doesn't it? It's tall boy in AG's race, right? Debate. I appreciate y'all inviting us here tonight, because you are the men and women that show up to the fight for the conservative values that made this state and this country great. And it is a spiritual battle that we are in right now. We are the light and they are the dark. We saw that so clearly after they killed Charlie Kirk because of his Christian faith and his conservative values. And this is really all you need to know about me. I am the only one in this Attorney General's race that's been protested during the race at the Texas Capitol. They had these big, ugly green signs with my face on it, and they called me the bathroom bigot. Why? Because I don't want men in my little girl's restroom, locker, or shower. And this is a calling for me. This is not a job. That's why I don't take the salary. I give away the pension, the health care, reject that. I don't take the state license plate. They can get you out of traffic tickets. It's true. I don't take the lobbyist NFL tickets. I don't take the lobbyist ski trips. Like our president, I am only here to serve and fight for the conservative values that we believe in. And that is what I've done since day one. When I got elected to the House in 2018, was then chairman of the Freedom Caucus, and now I'm the Senate, and I've always been ranked as the top 1 or 2 most conservative members in the legislature, because this is a show me, don't tell me business. And it's why President Trump said I was a MAGA champion, and I have a conservative record second to none, because I can show you the results, not just talk about them.
thank each of you of the remarks. We now have a video from Congressman Chip Roy to play.
Hey everybody, it's Congressman Chip Roy. Unfortunately, duty calls, and I regret that I wasn't able to be with you in person. But I appreciate the opportunity to send this video to have a chance to speak to a great group of Texans who care about the future of our state. As many of you know, I'm running for Attorney General of Texas. After serving what will soon be my 8th year in Congress, representing the great people of the Texas Hill Country, I've decided I'm ready to come home and defend Texas from the assault against her by the radical left, Islamists, and under a different administration, our own federal government. Texans deserve an Attorney General who will be ready on day one. My commitment to the rule of law is personal. Law enforcement runs in my family. My great-great-grandfather served as a Texas Ranger in Blanco and Hays County. My grandfather was the chief of police in Sweetwater, Texas. Before serving in Congress, I was a federal prosecutor in North Texas, where I prosecuted gang members, illegal aliens, violent criminals, and drug traffickers in court, keeping criminals off our streets. I know the Office of the Attorney General well. My first legal job was in its Prosecutor's Assistance and Capital Litigation divisions while I was in law school at the University of Texas. I then served as Ken Paxton's first Assistant Attorney General, managing the legal strategy and operations of the largest law firm in Texas, including over 4,000 employees and 750 attorneys. I understand firsthand what it takes to recruit and build this law firm because I've done it. I'm prepared to execute the duties of this office on day one. You don't have to question my conservative credentials because I have a nationally recognized voting and legislative record that ranks at the top of every single chart among groups in Texas and nationally. A recent score showed that when looking at how members of Congress align with the Republican platform and President Trump's MAGA agenda, I have the top score among Texas members, the second highest score in the entire House, and the 5th highest in the House and the Senate combined. I've led on conservative priorities like border security, leading the fight to pass H.R. 2 in the House, election integrity, introducing the twice-passed SAVE Act to secure our elections, the pro-life agenda, fighting to repeal abusive laws such as the FACE Act, and the Protecting Life on Campus Act to stop the abortion pill. Banning members of Congress from stock trading, a bill I first introduced in 2019 and is now advancing to the House floor. Defunding rogue judges in their offices, most recently offering an amendment to do this in appropriations on the House floor. And importantly, fighting to ban Sharia law in Texas, co-chairing the Sharia Free America Caucus, and introducing legislation to ban Sharia adherence. I won't sit around and wait for direction or cues. I'll aggressively advance the priorities of Texans and demand the legislature supports a safe, secure, and sovereign state. As Attorney General, I will always ensure the Texas borders are defended and our communities are kept safe, whether certain corrupted local officials or Democrats in the courts or in Washington want it. The law will be enforced. I will build a legal powerhouse to halt the advance of Islamists and leftists working to undermine our state and keep Texas grounded in our Judeo-Christian heritage. And I will stand for the principle that Texans, not foreign interests or multinational corporations, should control the land, resources, and future of our state. As you consider who to support, I'd ask you to focus on which candidate has the genuine legal experience in the courtroom, proven conservative credentials with high scores and taking tough votes, has held elective office, and has proven success standing against the Democrat machine in office and on the ballot. I think you'll find I'm the only candidate that fits the bill. I'll be honored to earn your trust and your support. Thank you for your time, your engagement, and your commitment to the rule of law in Texas. God bless you, and God bless the great state of Texas.
Hayden.
I promise that's the only candidate that's going to go over the 2 minutes. Since Mr. Reitz got the opportunity to make the opening remarks, Senator Huffman, the first question starts with you. Each candidate will have the opportunity to answer this question. Each candidate in this race has a unique professional background. What is it about your own experience that makes you the most qualified candidate in this race?
Well, I think I can follow up what I was talking about in my introductory remarks. I think you can hear what I had to say about the time that I've spent in a courtroom, 100 jury trials, the time I've spent as a judge where you sit back and you look at things from a different perspective. So all of that, of course, is critically important. And the relationships during that work that I made with law enforcement and with other prosecutors is important as we look forward in the jobs of the AG. But on top of that, I think you have to look at the things that I've done as a state senator. When Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick first became Lieutenant Governor, and I had served with him as a state senator before he became Lieutenant Governor, the first thing he did was make me chair of state affairs. And that experience is where, all of the conservative legislation passed through. We didn't have that conservative state senate before he became the chair, before he became Lieutenant Governor. So in state affairs, we did all the big Second Amendment issues, all the pro-life issues. A lot of the issues that people had cared about for a long time that came out of the committee that I chaired. I actually passed the very first voter ID bill back in 2017 that stood up in the courts of Texas. And so over the years, I've continued to lead on conservative issues, whether it was campus free speech. There was a time when conservatives weren't allowed to speak on campus because they were, caused riots or protests and so forth. And back in 2019, I passed one of the strongest campus free speech bills in the country. And in fact, Trump invited me to the White House to a round table to talk about that, how that we could push that through the rest of the country. So I have led on conservative issues, and I'm ready to lead on conservative issues as Attorney General. And as Chair of Finance, as I said before, I have worked with state leadership, state business leaders around the state, and I'm ready to lead in many aspects of the Attorney General's office because of my years of experience. Thank you.
Senator Middleton, same question.
Well, because of what matters the most and what brought us here today, defeating the left, right? That's what matters the most. And I have that record doing exactly that. I took on the woke left's radical gender ideology, won, authored and passed the Save Women's Sports Law, the strongest women's privacy law in America, took on the atheists, defeated them, got prayer back into our public schools and the 10 Commandments back on the wall of every classroom. We took on our foreign adversaries in Austin and stopped China from buying our land, designated cartels as terrorists, tripled border security, and I'm now fighting our newest, most growing threat, which is Sharia law and Islamification. Well, look, for the past 7 years, I've been writing these laws, drafting these laws, defending them against attacks by Democrat attorneys in the House, defending them against attacks by Democrat attorneys in the Senate, getting them over the finish line, winning. Who better to enforce them as Attorney General than someone who's on the ground floor writing them and already defending them against the left's attacks? Also, this is a leadership role, 4,000 person agency, 750 attorneys. You've got to have that experience signing the front of a paycheck, knowing where the buck stops. And I have that, having started companies, having run companies. I'm an oil and gas attorney, and I've been in the oil and gas business nearly my entire life, which is learning how to do more with less. I wish government learned that lesson more often. But it is that leadership role because you're setting the conservative agenda for this entire state. That's what the Attorney General does, and that's exactly what I have the experience to do.
Well, I'll answer that question by saying again that Attorney General Paxton, who has served our state effectively and faithfully for the past decade, said that Aaron Reitz is the only qualified candidate in the race. And it's because of my record doing the work that is expected out of the Attorney General, leading those legal troops into legal combat to deliver legal victories at the state and federal level. Now, I also want to point out the irrelevance of the records that my two opponents on stage just raised. Senator Huffman mentions her time as a prosecutor and as a judge. Well, that would be interesting if the Attorney General had anything to do with prosecuting local crimes, but it doesn't. And even if it was relevant, she was a prosecutor 40 years ago and was a judge 20 years ago. And ever since getting elected to the Senate, has apparently practiced no law since then. The legislation that both of my opponents cite has nothing to do with this job. Article 4, Section 22 of the Texas Constitution says, quote, "The Attorney General shall represent the state of Texas in all courts and pleas." This is a legal law enforcement executive branch job. It is not a legislative job. So let's talk about the record that Senator Middleton raised. We all applaud. We talk about the bills that got passed. That's wonderful. You know what Senator Middleton has never done in his entire life, ever at any level? Defend anything even approximating those laws or going on offense with those laws in any court, in any hearing, in any legal capacity whatsoever. He graduated from law school 16 years ago and immediately inherited his family oil company. Now he's going to stand up here and say in rebuttal, oh, that's just like Ken Paxton. No, Ken Paxton was an elite attorney for 20 years before he ever even ran for the House in the first place. So the question you have to ask yourself is not what legislation did my opponents work on that I may like, but what is the legal record vindicating that legislation in the justice system? And on this stage, I'm the only one that's done it and the only one you can trust to get it done in the future.
Senator Huffman, because you were named in your opponent's debate answer, you have 30 seconds to respond if you so see fit.
I'll just say I stand proudly on my record. And yes, 40 years ago I was a prosecutor, but my experiences with victims and the things that I did in the courtroom are things that I'll never forget. And I have brought that with me through the state Senate as I've worked with victims through the years and with law enforcement. That's why all the major law enforcement associations in the state of Texas are endorsing me, because they know they can trust me and they know I'm going to work for victims and for them. Thank you.
Senator Middleton, same for you.
I don't respond to fourth place.
Well, that takes us to our next question. This one is for Senator Middleton. So the Texas Attorney General has a broad set of responsibilities and authority. On day one in office, what would your top 3 priorities be?
So number one, what you're seeing in Minnesota right now, right, where ICE is being blocked all over this country. It's not just in that state, obviously, we know that. It's happening elsewhere. It's mainly the blue states, but it's also blue counties. We've seen evidence of this in Bexar County, right, where they were trying to pay these defense funds for illegal immigrants. We have to enforce our ban on sanctuary cities, which is a Freedom Caucus priority. Zero tolerance for those that are in the way of President Trump's deportation agenda, because we can't just deport some illegal immigrants. We have to deport all illegal immigrants and get those out of the way that are blocking ICE, that are blocking President Trump. Election integrity, another priority of mine. That power was taken away from the Attorney General's office to prosecute election-related crimes. I fought to get that back, but now we need step 2, which is a task force devoted to investigating and prosecuting those that are breaking our election laws. Also going after some of the corruption that you're seeing, right? These NGOs, these nonprofits, we love to talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, but what about holding those accountable that are committing the waste and the fraud and the abuse? And of course, that includes George Soros, who I will investigate on day one in the AG's office.
Mr. Reitz, the same question to you. What would be your top 3 priorities on day one as Attorney General?
Well, so before I answer the question, I just want to show you that the disrespect, the contempt that someone like Mays has for this audience. Because I didn't attack his character. I pointed out his lack of a record. I pointed out the fact that he's never been a real lawyer in his entire life. I pointed out the fact that his legislative record, while important, has nothing to do with the job that he's applying for. It doesn't make him a bad person. I actually think that Mays is a good person. But we're applying for a competitive legal job to be your chief legal officer. And I think that a total lack of a legal record is utterly disqualifying. Mays can't answer that question. There's no actual explanation for it. And so he disrespects the audience here by not answering the question and just mocking the person asking the question. That's called ad hominem. Okay? And I hope that at some point Mays will address his total lack of preparedness for this job. Because of all the 4 candidates, he's by far the least qualified, just by lack of record. Now, my overarching priority is to advance the America First law and order agenda. I think that it is critical that this Attorney General partners with the Trump administration to make sure that all of those resources, we have a friend in the White House now. You know, when I cut my teeth as Paxton's deputy, we had an enemy in the White House. We had Joe Biden in the White House. I sued the 46th president 46 times, and I won 85% of those cases. And so look, we are going to partner with the Trump administration by someone who's already been vetted at the very senior most executive ranks of the Justice Department to continue to prosecute that war to advance the America First law and order agenda. It means deporting millions of illegal aliens. It means shutting down and smoking out every single Islamist that wants to set up Sharia law in this state. It means cracking down on big blue cities and big blue counties that want to turn our cities into cesspools of fraud, waste, abuse, and crime. It means unleashing oil and gas. It means going to war against all the public schools and the institutions of higher education that want to push DEI and affirmative action and the trans agenda. We're going to use every single legal tool at our disposal to go to war against the enemies of our Constitution, and we're going to do it in the justice system, and I'm ready to lead that effort to victory.
Well, the most important items that will be on my agenda will be keeping Texans safe. So you think, well, how are you going to do that? Well, let's start by this. Right now, there exists in the AG's office, and you can talk to prosecutors across the state, law enforcement across the state, a lack of trust. And that can be a variety of reasons what has caused that. But I intend to restore that trust. Why? Because the state of Texas has great resources and tools that should be available to local law enforcement, to local prosecutors, to do their job to help keep you safe. I believe with my relationships with law enforcement, with prosecutors, that I can restore that trust and build an AG's office that is a fabulous resource to help you be safe. That could be through task forces that have to do with fentanyl trafficking, human trafficking, fraud. Now, there's already a Medicaid fraud division in the AG's office, but all of that needs to be bolstered because the attention has not been on that. Every AG kind of has their own personality, their own priorities, what is important to them. That would be important to me, and it can take a lot of forms. It can be, as I said, through looking at fraud. We look at what's happening in Minnesota. We know there's fraud in Texas. Now, we have better safeguards than they do, but there's going to be hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud that are left on the table. That needs to be explored. You look at cybersecurity, scams on the elderly. All of that has been left by the wayside while other priorities have been sought after. I think we have to look at election integrity. The last legislative session, we've given the AG more power to prosecute all the crimes that are associated with fraud around our elections, and that needs to be aggressively pursued. As to foreign law and the invasion upon our culture, I think we have to look at that very carefully. I passed a bill back in 2019 because I could see Sharia law starting to eke into the family courts. And I passed the first bill in Texas to keep Sharia law out of family courts, and that is currently the law in Texas. Thank you.
Senator Middleton, you were mentioned again in Mr. Wright's response. Did you care to reply? The next question goes.
The contempt.
The next one, Mr. Reitz. The next question goes to you. The Texas Attorney General serves as the lawyer for the state of Texas, as you stated. In that role, the Attorney General is often the front line of defending Texas from federal overreach. As Attorney General, how would you push back against federal overreach, even if it meant disagreeing with a Republican president?
So let's talk about the two major chapters of my 4-year term as Attorney General. The first chapter is when we're going to have an ally in the White House. And I mentioned how that's going to look in my earlier remarks, and I'm going to touch in a moment on what it looks like when there's conflict. But I want you to think into the future. In the middle of my 4-year term, there's going to be a presidential election, 2028. Now, first of all, the Democrats are going to try to steal that thing again, so we're going to do what we can to prevent that. But if, God forbid, a Democrat wins the White House, we are absolutely going to go to war against that administration. We are going to use every tool at our disposal to stop the worst excesses. And we don't have to wonder what this is going to look like. I already led 46 lawsuits against the 46th president, and I won 85% of those cases. And it was on every single issue that we care about. Election integrity, border security, the trans agenda, abortion and pro-life issues, energy regulations, election integrity. You name the issue, and I went to war and won at every level of the justice system in state and federal courts during the hostile Biden era. And so every candidate is going to tell you, oh yes, I'm going to muster those lawyers to go to war. The difference between me and my opponents is I'm the only one who has sustained the battle scars and earned the ribbons from all of those years of legal campaigning against a hostile administration. Now, there may be instances in which there is honest disagreement between the state of Texas and the federal government. I'll give you one example. When I was at the Justice Department, for some insane reason, the state of Texas was giving in-state tuition to the children of illegals. Now, we entered into litigation and then settlements over that because it was manifestly illegal, and yet, despite our differences, we were able to broker a disagreement. No one better to negotiate honest disagreements than someone who's already served in the Trump administration, and that's me.
Well, I think there's always the possibility of federal overreach, and I think we're being naive if we think that there can't be federal overreach when there's a Republican president. And I think as Attorney General, my job would be to always preserve our state sovereignty. And yes, I will stand up to anybody who I think is making decisions that are against the best interests of Texas as a state and individual Texans, because I think that's what my job as AG would be. I'm not afraid to stand up to people. I wouldn't have made it from being a secretary at the DA's office, yes, 40 years ago, Aaron, 40 years ago, into the chair of finance, right, in the Texas legislature. I think there's some legislators in here. Shelley, you think you gotta be a tough girl to be chair of finance in the Senate? Yes, yes, ma'am. She said, never call me ma'am, but that's cool. But anyway, so yes, I will stand up to people. And I'll tell you a decision that the feds just, and I love President Trump. I think he's a great president. But he signed an executive order recently saying that, the feds were going to have control of AI. Basically, that's kind of a summation. Well, I kind of disagree with that. We passed a bill this session that dealt with child pornography, and it was my bill, and it said that whether it's a real child or AI, it's the same punishment, right? Yeah. Now, does the feds trying to tell us we can't do that? I will fight that, I guarantee you. So there are issues that we have to stand up. Is it a lot easier when we love our president? Yes. And will it perhaps be a different president in 2 years? Perhaps. Well, it will be different, maybe a different party, we hope not. But I will fight in any event, and I will make sure that we have the lawyers in place and the teams in place to be ready for action in any given moment. So thank you.
This is probably the most critical issue here. And what it comes down to is the 10th Amendment, our states' rights. That's what federalism is about. Because both the federal government and local government is a creation of the states and not the other way around. And we saw the consequences of this in the Biden years, where he was attacking Texas. He was attacking our sovereignty. And I have already led on this. Title IX, do y'all remember that? Where they say, oh, well, they'll never force a man in their girl's locker room. They'll never do that. They tried to rewrite the Title IX rules to do exactly that. Fought back and won on that. Also, Second Amendment. We had to pass the Second Amendment sanctuary law. Second Amendment is a sanctuary state. Texas is. That's why we passed constitutional carry as well. You should not have to pay a fee or a tax or government paperwork to exercise your constitutional right to bear arms, period. Yeah. The end. That was the Freedom Caucus that led on that. The list goes on, but here's one that's really important. It's before the Fifth Circuit right now in New Orleans. Our Solicitor General is correct, William Peterson. I believe the plaintiffs don't have standing right now. Because what this law does, the reason why it's so important is it allows Texas to defend itself against an invasion. We have a constitutional right, both in the federal and our state constitution, to defend Texas whenever we see that happen again, what Joe Biden did to us, where he's putting illegal immigrants first and citizens second. And that's exactly what Senate Bill 4 is. It's the state's deportation law. We can arrest illegal immigrants and deport them, send them back to a country of origin when the federal government is not doing their job. And this is why this fight is so important, and it already delivered these victories on our states' rights.
Senator Huffman, the next question starts with you.
Okay.
The face of human trafficking has changed from abductions and kidnapping to sexploitation and grooming. Today, criminals target and exploit Texas kids with deepfake online images and even groom them in their own schools. As Attorney General, how would you combat the new reality of human trafficking?
Well, I would be fighting that from day one. Anyone who knows me, and there's a few people in this room who've been working with me over the years, I've been the leader in fighting human trafficking for the last decade. The AG's office has had a human trafficking task force in existence for about 10 years, and that means people from around the state, law enforcement, prosecutors, nonprofits, they get together and they make a set of recommendations for the legislature for every session. I've carried that, it's called the Human Trafficking Omnibus Bill. And I've carried that bill along in the Senate for the last 10 years. And we have done incredible things to try to put focus on human trafficking, to increase penalties, to provide resources for victims, to really think about the way that, we've looked at women who have been, and men who have been trafficked. We used to call them prostitutes, right? And now we call them victims because we realized what was going on. So this has always been a passion and a focus of mine. As it deals with the images, the AI images, I just spoke to that in the last question. I mean, I could see the issue. I've been following this issue for many years. 40 years ago when I was a prosecutor, there were individuals that were, molesting and harming children. And unfortunately, there's always evil out there, right? No matter how hard we try, how many laws we make, there is always evil. Unfortunately, in my line of work, I've seen it. And that's why I think you need people who are passionate about the issue, are ready to fight for the issue, who are willing to work with victims, with law enforcement, to try to right an incredibly evil wrong. And my passion will always be to do everything that I can do in my power to help these victims. Thank you.
Senator Middleton, same question for you, sir.
Well, so the reason why this is so important is the left is coming for our kids, right? That's what they're really coming for. They loved an open border. They got to traffic in children, sex trafficking, human trafficking, the list goes on. And it's part of a nexus of organized crime. They were profiting off of this. It was feeding the system. And then these organized cartels that were operating in Texas because of that open border, obviously we know that made them a lot stronger, right? 4 years of Joe Biden as president. It's up to us to fight back. Because human trafficking doesn't stop at the county line. That is where the DA's jurisdiction stops, by the way. It goes between counties. It goes between states. This is a regional issue. I see it all the time on I-45 where the ports are, I-10. Those are two main corridors I've had to fight within my Senate district. And that is why it was so important to restore and grow the power of the AG to prosecute human trafficking. Because the DA is not always going to do this. Sometimes it's because they don't have the tools. Sometimes it's because they won't do it, actually. And they're treating our laws and our Constitution as a suggestion, which, by the way, if you're doing that, you need to be removed from office. It's pretty simple. And so that is why I fought to add the power to prosecute in the AG's office after 180 days if the DA takes no action after that point. Because this is about protecting our children, the most innocent among us. And that has been a calling for me since day one, to fight for our children.
Look, I think if you're gonna sex traffic kids or sexualize our kids, you ought to just be shot on the spot. I want to be clear about that. You deserve the due process that you deserve is immediate death. Okay, that's my standard for these sick, satanic creeps that are preying on our kids. Now, sadly, the Attorney General does not have unilateral authority to kill all these people, or as much as I want to. As much as I want to, okay? I don't have the power. If the legislature would have given it to me, we would have done it. Thanks a lot, senators. Jeez. Pretty weak on trafficking, I think. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. So look, the AG's office has tremendous power to go after not only human traffickers, sex traffickers, but also on this tech issue where we're seeing like deep fakes, right? And we have a lot of like, if you're the parent of teenagers in here, there's the ability for these people to do deep fakes and just take a school portrait of your kid and put it on a naked body, and then it gets sent all over the place, and it's not actually real, but it's been sent around and circulated, and the reputational harm and the psychological harm that's done with all that. The AG has tremendous powers to stop all of these things. This is why in the past, my record of going to war against all of these big tech platforms, these online platforms that are not properly supervising what's happening. We've sued Meta over their failure to monitor the sex trafficking that's happening on Facebook Messenger. Same thing with Amazon Web Services and Instagram and Apple and TikTok and all of these things. You've got to have an attorney general who, yes, understands the issue rightly. I think the three of us understand the issue rightly. The difference that I offer, and I'll close with this, is that I have actually done it before. What you hear on stage from my two opponents is aspirational. What you hear from me is real. And you can trust that I can get it done because I've already done it. Thank you.
You know, I feel for appellate judges. You can't get those trial lawyers to stop when the red light goes on. So the next question goes to you, Senator Middleton. Last September, the Lone Star Infrastructure Protection Act went into action. The act, for those of you who don't know, prohibits businesses controlled by foreign adversaries, namely China, Iran, North Korea, and Russia. It prevents them from having access to critical infrastructure like our electric and water systems. What is your plan as Attorney General to enforce the act to protect Texas's critical infrastructure?
Well, we've seen China mean us harm, right? This is an enemy to America. And I will tell you this, when that bill was passing in 2025, it had failed in 2023. And I got calls about that in my office, not state office, oil and gas office. And people were telling me things like, I'm for the bill, but I'm afraid what will happen to my family back in China. Does that not tell you we're doing the right thing here? And not only that, after it failed in 2023, we figured out that WeChat, which is a Beijing-based social media company, was colluding with Gene Wu, right, who's the Democrat caucus chair in the House, to oppose it and say that we were all racist because we were trying to pass this. That it's racist to put America first. That it's racist to put Texas first. And what we have to do is enforce that law. There should be no foreign ownership, not of just our critical infrastructure there, but those enemy countries should not own any square inch of Texas, not one part, not our water, not our minerals, not our timber, nothing. Nothing is what they should own. But that's why this law is so important. It also prohibits them from contracting, from servicing this critical infrastructure like our power plants, like our transmission lines, like retail electric providers. That's a smart meter they have in their home right there. We cannot allow these foreign countries to have access to things like that. Imagine what they could do to our grid if they could turn that off. Can you imagine what we saw in 2021 during Snowbit? If they just turned that off, chaos is what would result. And the AG's office has the ability to enforce it. I made sure that was in the bill. And not only that, the AG can bring action to force them to divest. A very powerful tool that I fought to make sure was in there. I was on the conference committee getting that done, putting Texas first.
China is no doubt the great power enemy of the United States of the 21st century. And yet, over the past 40 or so years of so-called free trade agreements, China has slipped into every aspect of American life, our economy, our consumer products, our technology, and the linking is so inextricable that we now find ourselves in a very difficult position of decoupling reliance and now policing to ensure that China isn't further infiltrating our critical infrastructures. Now, I'm very happy that the legislature passed this bill that went into effect on September of 2025, just a few months ago. And what I especially like is that 1 month later, Attorney General Paxton launched the first investigation consistent with that legislation. So it's new legislation, and it's just now getting used. The legislature provides the tool, and then the Attorney General uses the tool to do something with it. It's a critical function difference. It's a different sport entirely, if you like that analogy. And so what Paxton has done is he is investigating actually a company that is about 100 miles southeast of where we are right now, that manufactures batteries and chips, and it has to do with they're the AI centers. You see those big barns, right, that are full of all the computers and whatnot. So the investigation is just now getting off the ground, and we're now investigating, and it's going to ripen into litigation. But the bottom line is, China is an existential threat. And there are many tools that we can use to keep that great red dragon out of Texas. And as Attorney General, you can have confidence that I'm going to wield those legal weapons to cut the head off of the dragon.
I was happy to joint author of that legislation with Senator Colcourse, who had been working on that legislation for, as May said, a couple of sessions, and it had a considerable pushback in the House. But we got it out of there, and it is new legislation. So I think the AG's office, I think it's a bigger problem than we even know, right? Because we saw the problem out there, we wrote legislation, but there needs to be some accounting of what the current ownership is. So as far as the critical infrastructure, I think the AG is going to need to work with the PUC to make sure that we are monitoring reporting requirements, the attestations that are required under the law, that we use the authority that we have to put out injunctions if necessary, to file suit, and all the things that the law set up that the AG can do to monitor. I think it'll actually take a section or a team of lawyers and those that are trained in how to look for this to make sure that legislative intent is actually met in this situation. Because whether it's the critical infrastructure, which is pretty terrifying when you think about it, but also the land ownership, which of course the AG has powers to monitor that and divest if necessary, to follow through with the chain of title, a lot of investigatory powers, civil injunction powers, and then even referral for criminal prosecution if necessary. So I think you have to have a strong stance. It's an important issue. It's important to Texans, and in issues where, or situations where it looks like it's a national security threat, I think you would really have to jump on it, bring in the federal government to look at it as well, work with military if necessary, because I think we just have seen the tip of the iceberg, and we need to dig deeper into this issue, which could threaten Texas. Thank you.
Mr. Reitz, the next question starts with you. Here in Collin County, we've been dealing with the development known as Epic City, now called the Meadows. A major concern about Epic City is the possible enforcement of elements of Sharia law. In the last session, the Texas legislature passed HB 4211, which was authored by local Representative Candy Noble. And that bill was meant to address this very issue. If elected as Attorney General, how would your office balance the opposition to these discriminatory developments while also protecting religious liberties of Christians and others here in Texas?
Well, let me start by making very clear. Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. Now, they are very intentionally targeting Texas because they know that Texas is the crown jewel of America and America is the last best hope for Western civilization. And if they can infiltrate and invade and convert and take over our schools and get the laws to accommodate their sick practices, they know that they can win and defeat Western civilization. But I'm here to tell you that as Attorney General, there is no way in hell that is ever going to happen on my watch. And I'm going to treat these Sharia law pushers just like the feds treated the mafia in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, which is to say to treat them like the crime syndicate that they are. How many mob bosses did we put behind bars for committing murder? Answer is not many. Why? Because they're sophisticated. They wipe their fingerprints off the weapon. But what did we do to destroy them? Financial crimes, process crimes, racketeering, tax fraud, tax evasion, trafficking, RICO violations, you name it. We created a bramble bush of investigations and litigation so overwhelming that they suffocated out. And now we remember the mafia only from movies that get produced. Okay? I'm going to go so hard on these guys. I'm going to go against their network of C3s, C4s, political candidates, grant-making entities from the state, federal, and local levels. And we are going to smoke out every last Sharia law pusher so they can either go back to any number of Muslim-majority countries that they can enjoy their wonderful lives in, or they could just self-deport back up to some leering center in Ilhan Omar's district. But they're going to get the hell out of Texas when I'm Attorney General.
Could you repeat the question? Because I'm not sure I'm answering it. About balancing.
I'm gonna skip the preface. The question is, if elected as Attorney General, how would your office balance going after and stopping these discriminatory developments while also protecting the religious liberties of Christians and others in the state of Texas?
And I think that that's a great question. And to the point of course, we don't want a culture taking over our state. We don't want Sharia law in our courts, in our schools. We don't want, anybody to try to indoctrinate our children or our own religion. Of course, and we must fight against that. And that's why, and I think I mentioned in one of my prior questions, that's why when I first saw this, because we were actually seeing this down in in an area I represented in Fort Bend, down further south, where there was some Sharia law that was kind of eking into some of the divorce agreements or adoption agreements and so forth, and that was wrong. So we wanted to keep foreign laws out of our courts. So that law was passed. So there are ways to address this in a legal way that solves the issue but doesn't step upon religious liberties. I do believe that our religious liberty, our freedom of religion is the most important right that we have, because in countries that start eating away at people's religious liberties, you see all the other freedoms disappear as well. So we must preserve religious freedom for all faiths. But there's a fine line there, because we are concerned about what the Islams and some of this that we see in our states, and we don't want it. Because we want assimilation, we don't see it. We see something like Epic City, which we don't like, which thank you, Representative Noble, for having that great piece of legislation. And again, that's new legislation. We got to monitor it. We got to make sure it works. And a lot of times, and I think the legislators in here would tell you, that sometimes we do something, we think it's going to work, and we realize we got to tweak that a little bit, and we go back and fix it. But we have to monitor that, because this is critical to Texas. And I saw that almost 10 years ago, and I started working on it, and I would continue to work on it. Thank you.
This is not a religious liberties issue. When they think they have a right to kill Americans, when they see us as the infidel, this is our national security. This is America first. It's really that simple. And we've got to have zero tolerance for this, because you've seen it right here in Plano ISD. What's happening in Plano ISD with anti-Semitism? It's because of this. That is a symptom of it. And the Epic Center, which is now the Meadows, by the way, and has been renamed, I'm already working with Representative Noble. I'm already working with your county commissioner, Susan Fletcher. I'm glad to have their support in this race, because we've seen that clear and present danger here. And there is a powerful tool to stop it. We can deny them all public benefits. So what does that mean? The AG can sue to stop this: sewer, water, roads, electricity, management districts. In other words, the meadow will remain a meadow. That's what it needs to be. And not only that, the AG has the express authority to investigate nonprofits. That's how they're laundering this money, right? Through all these nonprofits like CARE, Muslim Brotherhood. You know, we've got to investigate them, because I guarantee you that does not stop with CARE and Muslim Brotherhood. And when I do exactly that, we're adding to that list, the enemy entities list. And you know what that means when we add them to the enemy's entities list? They cannot buy land in Texas, period. The end. But it's more than that. It's more than that. There's an even more powerful tool that is not being talked about tonight. It's in the government code. It's a law against seditious organizations. What does that mean? Organizations that want to undermine our constitutional republic by threat of force. And that is exactly what they are doing. And I will enforce that to dissolve them, prohibit them from doing business in Texas, and sell their assets. It's that simple.
The next question starts with Senator Huffman. The most common way the Texas Attorney General's office interacts with Texans is through the enforcement of child support. However, given the volume of casework to be done in this area, many parents and children in Texas struggle with delinquent support. How would you work to strengthen the Texas Attorney General's office enforcement of child support?
Well, I think you'd have to get in there right away and see, you know, where the issues are. What is slowing down the process? Do you have enough employees? Are the employees properly trained? It just seems like common sense to me. Clearly, the children of Texas who depend upon child support through judicial orders deserve to have an effective and efficient system by which they get their checks, right? Or the families get their checks. That's clear. We do hear complaints from individuals. I've had women come up to me in the course of this campaign saying, nobody ever talks about child support, but you don't understand when you depend on that to feed your kids or to pay your rent, that it's critically important to you. So other issues may be important to other people, but child support is important to me. So when I look about in the AG's office, one of the goals I would want to accomplish is to make sure that what I call the bread and butter jobs of the AG's office, whether it's, child support, the Open Records Acts, timely responding to those, being responsive to the people of Texas. I'm not going to be an AG who goes from one, press conference to the next, from one press release to the next, from one lawsuit to get political attention to the next. That's not my style. My style is to serve the people of Texas. And to that end, when it came to child support, my job would be to make sure that what had my name on it, that I was presenting for the people of Texas would be a system that worked well and efficiently and worked better than it had before. Thank you.
Senator Middleton.
Let's talk about why that division is so important. It's there for the children, right? It's there to protect the kids and make sure that they have the resources they need for their education, for transportation, for clothing, to be fed, the most basic things in life. And that's why it's so important to enforce these child support orders. Because when they are not enforced, who suffers from that, right? The kids do. Well, that's why I've already fought for the children in our legislature. There was a law going through that passed the House and came over to the Senate. And you know what it would have done? It would have lowered the interest rate on past due child support. Now, this is already past due, right? This is delinquent child support. Who suffers if that happens, right? If that interest rate is lowered. I killed that. I made sure that that bill did not pass because I want to protect our kids. But not only that, we need to make it better on the case management system. They are transitioning to a cloud-based system right now. That needs to be completed because it will make it easier on the moms and the dads of our great state to make sure that they're getting the money that they are owed to take care of their child. And not only that, we have offices all over the state, right? The regional offices for the Child Support Division throughout Texas. However, that is one of the largest components of the AG's office in Austin, most employees, right? Why don't we move those jobs around Texas? Austin is the most liberal big city in this state, the most expensive. Let's distribute those jobs all over Texas, save money, and make those employees more accountable to you. They work for you, the taxpayers, and that's exactly what I will do in the AG's office.
You know, as I was traveling around the state with Paxton as his deputy from 2020 to 2023, the premise of the question was exactly right. Everybody was there to hear Paxton or me or someone else talk about all of the blockbuster cases that we were winning at the trial courts or on appeals or up at the U.S. or Texas Supreme Court. But then as the event would dissipate, everyone would come up to any of the staff that was there, or Ken or me, and they would want to talk about the child support issues. And this is an underappreciated but huge aspect of what this office does. The Attorney General's office is around 600 or 700 lawyers and a total of around nearly 4,000 total staff. Half of that is child support. Half of it. It's extraordinary when you think about it. But it plays a mission essential role in this network of family courts, 4D courts, child protective services, child support enforcement orders, custody disputes, all of these things. The AG plays this narrow, but really where the rubber hits the road role, which is most people, all of these things, child support, all these things, a divorce, custody, it's paperwork, right? But at the end of the day, a mom or a dad who is owed certain monies checks their bank account once or twice a month, and they feel it. It is essential that the Attorney General's office is as expeditious and accurate as possible in enforcing those child support orders. Now, as both of my colleagues mentioned, the AG's office is right in the middle of a transition to a cloud-based system. I'm the only one in this race who has supervised major aspects of child support enforcement. If that transition, which is designed to help kids and families, is going to go smooth, we need to have someone who is Paxton's endorsed successor, who has experience leading those functions to carry it to the next generation. Thank you.
This next question starts with you, Senator Middleton. After the 2020 presidential election, securing elections was a top priority for Republicans. However, in the recent years, much of the focus on election security feels like it has been diminished. As Attorney General, how would your office safeguard Texas elections, particularly the 2028 presidential election?
This is critical right here. Let me be clear. The 2020 election was stolen. Period. And we can never allow them to do that again because they will try. We saw it even in Harris County where they didn't commit voter fraud or election fraud. They shorted ballot paper on election day. Who would have thought that, right? They denied ballot paper to Republican precincts on election day. Voter integrity, right? Why did they walk out in 2021? Remember that when they flew off with Beto to Washington, D.C. and said that, Nancy Pelosi needed to do their job for them, the John Lewis Act, which would have overturned all of our election integrity laws in Texas. Thank God that did not pass because we were trying to make it hard to cheat. They were willing to quit on their job and surrender their office because we were just saying a couple simple things. Voter ID for absentee ballots, it's a felony for paid voter assistance, but these laws that I helped write, SB 1, the strongest in the country, they've got to be enforced. It is that simple. And you have to ask this question, why it's so important. Will a George Soros DA prosecute voter fraud?
Nope.
Of course not. That's why it's so important for the AG to have the power to do exactly that. Because there is no accountability without the AG's backup power to prosecute. Because one illegal vote cancels out your legal vote. And we know what their plan was. Open up the border and try to get illegal immigrants to vote, right? That's exactly what Joe Biden did, and that's why we're fighting to make sure only legally qualified citizens vote in the great state of Texas, and anyone violating any section of our election code needs to be prosecuted and jailed. It's that simple.
ChatGPT, give me an answer in under 2 minutes for how to answer correctly an election integrity question. I mean, look, here's the deal. We can talk about election integrity in theory, and then we can talk about the actual legal combat that I've done to secure the ballot box. If you don't have free, fair, transparent elections, you don't have a constitutional republic. We can debate all the issues all night long, and you may like some answers, you might not like some others. But if you can't express those views at the ballot box and have confidence that your vote was tallied, secured, and counted against other rightly tallied and secured and fair and transparent votes, what does it matter? Then we're just playing a game that can be rigged, often by the Democrats. Now, I've been fighting for election integrity in court because that's the only question that matters, not what bills you signed on, although bills are important. 2020 election, Paxton and I filed Texas v. Pennsylvania, challenging on constitutional grounds the stolen election. I'm the only one that was actually in the justice system fighting to stop the stolen election. Then, both in the 2020 cycle and in the 2022 cycle, one of the divisions that reported to me was the Election Integrity Division. And we deployed troops all over the state, ready, plainclothes law enforcement, poll watchers, litigators, everybody ready to go in all of the major big blue cities and the big blue counties where you see most, if not all, of the fraud happening. And again and again and again and again, we filed motions for injunction, we filed pleadings, we filed complaints, we filed appeals, we filed accelerated appeals at every single level. And with all of the tools that we had available to us, we were able to make Texas elections more secure than any other state in the nation. Now, I'll close with this. Moving forward, yes, it's true, we've got great election integrity laws on the books. But again, the question you have to ask yourself is who has carried those weapons in war? Not who's talked about them, who has defeated the election of fraudsters in court. And again, it's only Aaron Reitz. Thank you.
Well, I think part of the question was, we don't hear. Could you repeat the question? Because I want to try to answer the question.
Well, in 2020, election integrity was the biggest deal, for obvious reasons.
Yes.
Since then, it seems like it has diminished. What is your office going to do if elected as Attorney General to safeguard elections, particularly the 2028 presidential?
All right. And I thought I had heard the word diminished, and I think I would disagree with that. Because actually, I think the idea of a safe and a secure election has actually been at the top of our minds of many of us who participate in the process, right? And I think in the legislature, we've had a lot of discussion. As May said, we had, the Democrats leave the state. We spent a whole summer waiting for them to come back. We have worked really hard to try to get laws in place to make sure the elections that are coming up will be fair and that we have safeguards in place to make sure that there's no cheating. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. So when I think about the role of the AG, certainly it's important to be able and be ready to go to court, to have a team ready to make any, jump in on election day or immediately thereafter if there's complaints. But I think the preparation for the election is a critical, important role for the Attorney General to work with local entities, to work closely with the Secretary of State, to ask questions, to make sure that the laws that have been put into place are actually being executed, right? Because if you don't do that, then shame on you on complaining on election day that, hey, this isn't working. If you're not sure that everything is in place ahead of time, the AG's office actually has a very close relationship with the legislature, or they should. We talk with them all the time about laws and how to implement them and how to make it work and how we can make their job easier when they have to enforce the laws and go to court. So this is something that needs to be very well thought out ahead of time. Sure, you can scream and holler about how you're going to go to war and take your guns and all this stuff, and that's all important. But hey, there's some hard work to do ahead of time to get ready for a great election. Thank you.
All right, this is the final question of the evening. Mr. Reitz, it starts with you. Last week, Republicans suffered a surprising loss in Senate District 9 special election in Tarrant County. In a district where President Trump won by 17 points and former Senator Hancock won by 20, the Democrat was able to flip the seat by 14 points. Please make your case as to why you are the best candidate to win the Attorney General's race in the November general election.
Well, look, everyone right now is pontificating about why that district, which was for years is supposed to be a Republican gimme. How did we lose? And everybody's thinking about it. Everybody's doing their autopsies and their postmortems on it right now. Okay, I will withhold judgment on what exactly happened in Northwest Tarrant County. But here's my reflection. What we know is that Democrats will outwork us, outfinance us, outmaneuver us, outmanipulate us, outscam, cheat, and do whatever it takes to burrow themselves into the inner workings of Texas state government. They want to turn this state blue, and now their spirits are buoyed. because they saw a target district and they took it. And they know that right now we're scrambling. Here's why this matters in this race. We need to elect an attorney general who is going to go to war against the left. These are not our friends. These are not our dear colleagues on the other side of the aisle. They want to destroy us. And they are going to steal one seat after another. And they just gained their equivalent of a Mount Suribachi. You remember Iwo Jima? They just got it in Northwest Tarrant County. And so now they have a landing strip to continue their prosecution, their pressing of their bluification of Texas. Now look, at the end of the day, this is why you need a no-compromise fighter who has been in combat against the left and will defeat them. I can't control every single district in the state, but I can tell you that the Democrats are lawless, they are unconstitutional, and they'll stop at nothing to advance their agenda. You need a chief legal officer who's going to do everything possible to stop them, and that's me.
Senator Huffman?
Well, I think the question was, how would you win a general election? So that's the question I'm going to answer. And I would love to be your Republican nominee for Attorney General. You can trust me to be a conservative. All the things you care about, all the things we've talked about tonight. Look, I've taken over 40,000 votes in the Texas Senate. You can go look it up. You can go look me up. You can go Google me. You can go see what I did as a judge. ACLU hated me. I was too tough. You can look at all of that. But I have worked. I've been up for election many times over the years. I was sitting there trying to remember in my mind, try to count. But I've had Democrat opponents every time. And my district has not always been a hardcore Republican district. It's been strengthened in redistricting, but it hasn't always been. But I've also had opponents every time, and I have smashed the Democrat every time. Why? Because I do get independent voters to vote for me. Why? Because I work very hard on public safety issues, on criminal justice issues, which everybody cares about, right? Everybody cares about their communities, the safety of their communities. I've worked hard on business issues to make sure that the businesses in my communities thrive. I've made sure that I took care of veterans, that I took care of the elderly, that I was a compassionate person, but never losing my conservative core. And that's the kind of Republican I think that you need to win a statewide election. Someone you can trust to be a conservative, but someone who is able to get some of the independent voters. And that's important. I don't know what happened in SD9. I wouldn't begin to try to guess. But I do know that there are Republicans that went and voted for the Democrat because there's no way to make the numbers look anything other than that. And what's the reason for that? I don't know. But I think that I would be a very appealing candidate on the ballot, and I think you could be certain that you would have a Republican Attorney General. Thank you.
Well, look, I think what matters the most here is who's got the experience defeating Democrats in tough general elections. You know, when I got elected to the Texas House, that was for a House seat drawn for a Democrat, Craig Island. I won by 56% of the vote. And they always say, oh, Mace can't win this. He's too conservative. Well, I won it. And I was chairman of the Freedom Caucus and said, oh, he's going to lose in the 2020 election. I won it by over 60% in the 2020 election. I grew that Republican margin. That is tough to do in a presidential year. And that was also, by the way, while I was ranked the top 1 or 2 most conservative members of the House. And the way that you do that is simple. It's hard work. It's not hard. It's why I helped Matt Shaheen in a 200 vote margin race that he had in 2018 and 2020. I was in the Valley last night. I saw my friend Senator Adam Hinojosa. I was at polls for him in November of 24. And you know what we did? We flipped a district that had never had a Republican state senator in history. And we won it 1 million people down in the valley, all the way up the coastal bend, have a Republican state senator now because of that. And the simple formula is this: it's hard work. This is not that hard to do. And I have been in the fight doing exactly that. And I have the experience to win in these tough elections. And it is going to be a tough election this midterm year. And I know I can deliver victory for our great state.
So we're now going to move to 1 minute closing statements. I'm going to exercise a little bit of moderator's discretion. Since Senator Middleton just gave his answer, Senator Huffman, will start with you for your
Yes.
closing minute.
1
Closing
minute.
minute. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I don't
I'm
have-
sorry for saying no.
Thank you. Well, you've heard a lot from us tonight, and I think you probably had an opportunity to see that we're different, and I think that's a good thing. But I stand on my background, my experience, my character, my work ethic, and my desire to serve the people of Texas. I will do it with all my heart. I will work very hard for you. I am a proven conservative. I have strong support from law enforcement, and I would be, and I don't say this, if I didn't feel I was very qualified, I'd never say this, but I do think it would be great to have a female attorney general, and I'd be the first female attorney general in the history of Texas, the first mama. I'm a proud mom of a 28-year-old Army captain who's in the JAG, and I'd be a darn good attorney general for you, and I'd love to serve you. And so I put all that before you tonight. I say, God bless you. I've left this in God's hands, and God bless you all. God bless Texas.
Look, there's a reason why the left has protested me. There's a reason why they've threatened my life. There's a reason why they've threatened my wife's life, my children's lives. And the reason why is because I'm already defeating the left. They know who their true enemy is in this race and who has already been stopping what really is the woke mind virus. Elon was right about that. And look, because of that proven conservative record, that's why I've been endorsed by the leading grassroots groups you've got to have to win a statewide primary, like Texas Values, Texas Homeschool Coalition, Texas Eagle Forum, Moms for America, True Texas Project, Texas Family Project. Riley Gaines has endorsed me in this race. 51 Trump-endorsed legislators, the majority of our state Republican Executive Committee members. David Barton has as well. And look, I'm never retreating from Washington, D.C., because I'm never going to Washington, D.C. I have always known that the fight is here. And Macy and I are blessed with 4 little ones. Those are my daily reminder of what we're fighting for here. And the reason why it's so important is we don't have another Texas to move to. This is it.
I remember the first time I ever swore an oath to the Constitution. I was a brand new second lieutenant, 22 years old, hair sadly fast approaching its current state. And I raised my right hand and I said, I, Aaron Reitz, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, as someone who deployed to Afghanistan back then, I primarily thought about those foreign enemies. The next time that I swore that oath was in the West Wing with my wife and 4 kids on my left and Attorney General Bondi on my right. And I raised my hand and I said the exact same oath word for word. And yet in those intervening nearly 20 years, I had come to appreciate that yes, while we have grave foreign enemies, the primary enemies that we are confronting today are the domestic enemies. President Trump trusted me to lead legal troops into legal combat to deliver legal victories for our state and our values. Senator Cruz trusted me to do it. Attorney General Paxton trusted me to do it, and he endorsed me to succeed him. And now my ask to you, the voters, is to trust me to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, as your next Attorney General of Texas. Thank you and God bless.
Let's give one more round of applause for our candidates. Well, thank you all. I know it was a long night, but please don't rush out if you don't have to. We'd love to have you guys hang out. There's more. The bar's still open. Please hang out with the candidates, talk to them. We also have several other local candidates who are running for office in the room with us. Talk to those guys as well. And I want to give one special shout out to the Collin County Young Republican Chairwoman Shelby, who put this whole thing together. Shelby Johnson. With that, thank you guys. Have a good night.